China and Latin America will take another step closer to toward closer relations. The first ministerial meeting of the China CELAC Forum kicks off in Beijing shortly. The community of Latin American and Caribbean states represents more than 600 million people. CCTV's Michael Voss joins us live from Havana. And Michael, what's behind the launch of this new China CELAC Forum?
Well, Elaine, for decades, Latin America and the Caribbean were considered America's backyard. But in recent years, China's influence has grown enormously. Bilateral trade has jumped from 12 billion a year in 2000 to almost 290 billion in 2013. China is Latin America's second largest source of imports, and it's its third largest destination for exports. And now China believes it has a regional organization and that it can deal with and do business with across a whole range of issues.
The 33-nation community of Latin American and Caribbean states was created just over 3 years ago. It includes Cuba, but not the United States or Canada. Last year's four-nation Latin American tour by China's President Xi Jinping showed the strategic importance China now places on the region. This week's forum in Beijing will focus on boosting cooperation across a range of issues.
China is a market, it's a huge market for Latin American products, and it's a source of investment for Latin America. On the other hand, China is fast developing technology, so there are a number of issues in which Latin America and the Caribbean will benefit from a closer relationship with China.
From China's point of view, why turn to CELAC?
China is obviously saying, okay, I recognize CELAC as the valid interlocutor or the organization that carries the weight of Latin America and the Caribbean at a point when Latin America and the Caribbean are behaving more and more autonomously in international relations.
The European Union is also taking a greater interest in the region and later this year will host its second EU CELAC summit.
The European Union is interested in working with CELAC in very specific areas: investment, climate change, drugs, regional security, to name the most important.
And why CELAC?
Because it's an umbrella under which the region comes together, not just the region as the continent, but including the Caribbean islands. And it's one of the major added values of CELAC that it has become a bridge between the Caribbean and the continent. Thanks to Cuba in large part, I have to say.
Elaine, it isn't all going to be plain sailing this week in Beijing. Some Latin American countries are concerned that cheap Chinese exports are starting to hurt domestic manufacturers, while the general economic slowdown in China is also having an impact across the region, whose exports are mainly tied to basic raw materials.
And Michael, can you talk about some of the major areas of trade between China and Latin America and the Caribbean?
Well, as I said, basic raw materials coming out of Latin America, oil from Venezuela, for example, copper from Chile, iron ore and soybean from Brazil, soybean from Argentina. Very few manufactured exports so far, although China did recently buy some jet aircraft from Brazil, and it also gets pharmaceuticals from Cuba. The other direction, it's as you'd expect, it's primarily manufactured goods. Here in Cuba, for example, there are buses, there are ships, as well as all the shoes and televisions and electronic items. The other big thing now is investment. Latin America is looking to China for investment. It's already begun. There's infrastructure projects going on. When Xi Jinping was here in July, he committed China to some $30 billion in investment, including a massive project to build a railroad link from Brazil across the Andes to Peru so that Brazilian exports could reach the Pacific directly.
All right, CCTV's Michael Voss reporting live for us from Havana.